This is the news on top of the hour.
Live from our studio in Georgetown.
Kaieteur Radio, 99.1 FM.
Good evening. Welcome to this evening's newscast in Kaieteur Radio. I'm Kevin Smith. With the revelation that royalty being paid to Guyana by ExxonMobil is in fact being recouped by the US-based operator of the Stabroek Block, it should be noted that the country was warned about the misleading nature of the production sharing agreement at least 3 years ago by chartered accountant Christopher Ram. He had at the time, September 2019, even before ExxonMobil Guyana began production offshore, warned the PSA at Article 15.5 suggests that the payment of the royalty is by the contractor, but that is at best misleading. Royalty, he argued, is not being paid by the contractor, but like any other expense, is borne by the government as well as the contractor. He had posited that because royalty is a deductible expense to arrive at profit oil, the government bears half of the cost of the 2% royalty. And Vice President Bharat Jagdeo and officials of ESSO have argued that Guyana in fact collects more profit than the oil companies, with interests in the Stabroek Block, but it is the additional terms in the agreement where ExxonMobil really benefits. This is according to Tom Mitro, a former director of the University of Houston's Global Energy, Development and Sustainability Program, and a former Chevron executive with decades of experience negotiating international contracts. He argues that the country is losing primarily through the deductions being made by the operator and not necessarily in the profit-sharing aspect of the deal. Mitro highlighted that it was the many other negotiable clauses in the contract that were established in favor of Exxon, an approach that most of Guyana's peers have not agreed to. He cited as example that one such provision allows Exxon to recover all interests on loans borrowed to fund the development of related oil projects. In practice, Mitro said this means that the operator and its partners are able to charge Guyana for the cost of borrowing from their affiliates with no limits. The same goes for decommissioning fees and tax waivers, the expert added. And moving on, workers of a 24-year-old Guyanese businessman were on Thursday held at gunpoint by a gang of heavily armed Venezuelans as they invaded his home and carted off some $24 million worth in raw gold and an undisclosed sum of cash. The businessman was identified as Leon Sam, a fuel dealer within the Ethereum community. According to police, the 7-man gang attacked around 3 hours 30. Sam was not around at the time of the robbery, but his workers were there in a separate building from his home. The gunmen pulled up in a boat at the businessman landing and began their invasion. In other news, the government has asked the High Court for more time to seek expert guidance on how to respond to a case filed by Kaieteur News publisher Glenn Lal over the extensive tax waivers which were granted to ExxonMobil, its partners and affiliates. In January, the Kaieteur News publisher filed an action to challenge the petroleum agreement dated June 27, 2016 between the government and the oil companies. According to Lal, the agreement between the oil company and the government grants exemptions to persons other than licensees, which violate the Petroleum Exploration and Production Act, the Financial Administration and Audit Act, and the Constitution. And now let's tell you, a female Form 1 student of a Bartica secondary school was on Wednesday found with 2 Ziploc bags of marijuana stashed in her socks. Police learned that the school's headmistress had received information that Form 1 students had marijuana in class. The woman then decided to search the students and found the drugs in the 12-year-old girl's socks. When questioned, the child related that she had gotten the drugs from her classmate. The student added that the classmate had stolen the drugs from her father and brought it to school. Police have since contacted the father, and he has admitted that indeed the drug was his because he smokes it. They were subsequently released from custody and were advised to return on Thursday to be taken to the Child Care and Protection Agency and further investigation into the matter. And that brings us to the end of this evening's newscast. I'm Kevin Smith. Thank you for listening. Do stay tuned to Kaieteur Radio. Coming up at 19 hours 20 is the Glenn Lal Show. Tell it as it is.
Want value for your advertising